My name is Amber Leason. So when I was around 16 years old, I had my first big heartbreak, and I was devastated. And at that time, I had alienated all my friends, and my world revolved around this boy and this relationship. So in my devastation and loneliness, I had decided that I wanted to end my life. So one night I took all the pills I could find in the medicine cabinet, and obviously it didn't work, and I woke up the next day. And that was the first time that I actually felt high. I was feeling all the effects from those pills, and I didn't feel any of the pain. So that's where my addiction ultimately started. And before I graduated high school, I was already into the hard stuff. I had found a new group of people to hang out with. I was a partier, and I hung out with the partiers. I knew where the parties were. And I was already drinking heavily. I was doing cocaine, ecstasy, acid, mushrooms, whatever our teenage hands could get a hold of. So fast forward, somehow I graduated high school. Fast forward several years, my addiction just continued to progress and ultimately get worse. It doesn't get any better. So by 2014, I injured my back at work. And around this time, I had already been introduced to painkillers, and I was purchasing them illegally. So when I hurt my back at work, I was genuinely excited that I was going to get my own prescription. So within a couple months, it didn't take long at all before 120 pills was only lasting me 2 weeks. And I was compensating for the rest of the month until I would get my next prescription with meth. Opioid withdrawals are debilitating. They mentally mess with you and physically are painful and just completely draining. It's impossible to function. So that was my way of functioning. I did this dance for about a year, and by 2015, I knew that I needed help, and I had decided to go to rehab because at this point, I had lost my job, I lost my apartment, I lost my car, and I lost my son. He had decided that he wanted to go live with my mom because he didn't want to see me like that anymore, and it was a good choice. So I went to rehab in 2015. On December 14th, 2016, my mom came to pick me up. She and my son were going to spend some time with me, and when she got there, she was alone, and she told me that my son did not want to see me. And they had sat down and written a letter together for me, and it was very harsh and very real and very raw, but it was absolutely everything that I needed to hear. And in that moment, I decided right then and there that I wanted to go home and I wanted to get sober. And I've been sober since that day. So it is 6 years now of God-given sobriety. And I went home and started working, started going to church. I knew that I couldn't do this alone, and I was too prideful to go back to rehab. So I had started going to church, and in the meantime, I still have contact with this guy. It was in an unsafe situation and a very abusive relationship, so I had to delicately kind of break that off. It had to be a process. So in my codependent nature, I wanted to help him get sober. So I started going to church, and one day I had him meet me there, and this was on February 5th, 2017, and we met early at a fast food place that was on the corner. And when he stood up from the table, a syringe fell out of his pocket, and I was devastated because even though I knew in my heart he wasn't sober, I wanted to believe that he was trying. So we started fighting, and this was before Christ. So we were on the street, and we were physically fighting. We were screaming, we were yelling, we were going back and forth. And in the midst of it all, I looked down at the sidewalk, and on the sidewalk it said, "I'm rebuilding the life that heroin tore apart." So I knew in that moment that that was God speaking directly to me, and that the enemy was doing anything and everything he could to keep me out of that church. But it was like a magnet, and I was just instantly drawn, and I booked it. I took off, and I headed straight for those doors. And when I got in there, I just became completely undone. I remember worshiping and singing the song "Good, Good Father," and I was just drenched in tears. Everything I had was poured out, and God entered in, and that's the day that I gave my life to Christ, and he filled that hole and all those empty spaces for me. So since then, I haven't looked back. I've been running hard for Jesus, and the Lord brought into my life an amazing husband, a godly man.
I'm Derek.
I'm Amber.
We're the Leasons, and we have been married for just over
3 years.
Okay, good job.
You thought I was gonna forget?